Valve may be getting ready to do the most Valve thing possible, launch a living room gaming PC with almost no traditional hype cycle, let the internet find the shipping paperwork first, and then make everybody argue about the price before the product is even officially on sale. And honestly, the price is the whole video, because right now, the Steam Machine looks close, not sometime eventually, close, actually close. The kind of close where shipments are moving, SteamOS is being updated, and Valve is still telling outlets that its 2026 plans have not really changed. But whether this thing becomes a mainstream living room hit or another enthusiast box for people like us, pretty much comes down to one number. So let's talk about what is happening. Over the last couple of weeks, people have been digging through US import records, and the paperwork is very interesting. So Brad Lynch surfaced shipments tied to Valve, Quanta, Ingram Micro, TechFront, and Chong Computer Company. Now, the category on the import documents is game consoles. The shipments pretty much started showing up around April 23rd, and by weight, we are talking about roughly 50 tons of hardware moving into US distribution. That does not automatically mean that every single box is a Steam Machine. I want to be very careful there. Some of that inventory could be Steam Decks, especially since the deck has been dealing with stock issues. Now, some of it could be Steam Frame hardware as well. Some of it could be accessories or mixed inventory. We don't really have a clean public breakdown. But if you are Valve and your manufacturer is Quanta and import records are showing game console class shipments into US warehouses, pretty much right as SteamOS is getting Steam Machine references, that is not nothing. That is smoke, and maybe it is more than smoke. So The Verge looked at the weight and did some rough math around what that could mean in the actual units. Their estimate pretty much lands around the 20,000 unit range, depending on how much of the shipment is actually Steam Machine hardware and how much is other Valve hardware. Now, 20,000 units, that sounds like a lot, until you remember what just happened with the Steam controller. The controller sold out in about half an hour, and it was a $99 accessory. If Valve launches a Steam Machine with a limited first wave, this thing could disappear very fast, even if the price is not exactly friendly. And that is the weird part. Demand might not be the biggest question, price is. There are basically two versions of this launch in my head. Version 1, Valve comes in aggressive. The base model lands somewhere around $600 to $650. The controller bundle makes sense, and suddenly the Steam Machine becomes a real conversation for people who were maybe thinking about a PS5, an Xbox, or finally getting into PC gaming without building a tower. At that price, I think this thing becomes a problem for everybody else. Not because it is more powerful than every console, it probably is not, but because it gives you Steam, SteamOS, your existing library, cells, cloud saves, mods, and a couch-friendly box that does not ask you to become your own IT department every night. Now, version 2, Valve prices it more like a compact mid-range PC. Now, we are talking about $799, $899, maybe even higher depending on storage, and also the controller situation. And at that point, the conversation changes immediately. Because now you are not asking, is this a cool living room Steam box? So you're pretty much asking, do I really want to spend close to $1,000 to play games that I may already own on another screen, when I could pretty much buy a console or build a stronger PC? That is a completely different buyer. This is why the rumored price range matters so much. Moore's Law is Dead has floated the idea that the 512 gig model could land around $600 to $650, but even that estimate has reportedly moved upward because RAM and component prices have been on the rise. Now, he has also argued that once Valve crosses $700, the value starts getting harder to defend. And I do get that argument, so Valve's own public language has not sounded like a subsidized console pitch. Pierre-Luc Raffaille has pretty much described the Steam Machine more like a PC with comparable specs, closer to the entry level of the PC space. That makes me think that Valve is not trying to pretend this is a $400 box. They know what it is, so if the final number starts with a 6, I think people lose their minds. If it starts with an 8, the room gets a lot quieter. And if it starts with a 9, now Valve is mostly talking to enthusiasts, Steam Deck believers, and people who specifically want PC gaming under a TV without building their own setup. Now, the specs make this even trickier. Now, based on what has been floating around, the Steam Machine is expected to use AMD hardware, likely a Ryzen 5 paired with something in the neighborhood of an RX 7600, but in a mobile class GPU style. So, in plain English, this is not a monster desktop rig. This is a small form factor, efficient living room hardware. That can be totally fine for a lot of people, especially with upscaling. A SteamOS box that sits somewhere above a Series S, but below the higher end console and desktop space could be more than enough. Most people are not running frame time graphs in their living room. They want the game to look good, feel smooth, and launch without a fight. But the price has to match the reality. If Valve asks console money, the hardware makes sense. If Valve asks premium PC money, people are going to compare it to what they could build themselves. And yes, I know building a PC is not the same thing as buying a polished SteamOS box. I know the form factor matters. I know the software experience matters as well. And I know that couch experience matters too. Now for me, this is not about replacing my main PC. I already have a desktop. A Steam Machine would be a second device. It would be the box by the TV. The whole point would be convenience. Sit down, grab the controller, wake it up, and play. I do not need it to pretty much beat my main rig. I need it to make my PC gaming feel natural in the living room. And this is why the controller bundle matters more than it might seem. If Valve wants people to treat this like a living room device, the standard package should feel complete. I know there are rumors that Valve may offer multiple options, 512 gigs, 2 terabytes, maybe versions with and without the Steam controller. Options are fine, Steam users like options, but the default experience should include the controller. Because if you are putting a box under the TV and asking people to compare it emotionally to a console, then the first box that most people buy should not feel like it is missing the main way to use it. I understand selling a cheaper no controller version for people who already grabbed the controller or pretty much plan to use another input. That pretty much makes sense. But if the main SKU ships without a controller, Valve is creating confusion it does not need. And honestly, that is the one thing that the old Steam Machine era cannot afford to repeat. So the first Steam Machines had a messaging problem. Too many manufacturers, too many versions, too many prices, and no single clean reason for normal people to care. The new Steam Machine has a much better chance because the Steam Deck changed the conversation. People understand Valve hardware now. They have seen SteamOS work. They have seen the value of taking a Steam library somewhere other than a desk. That trust is real, but trust does not erase friction. If the Steam Machine launches with limited stock, unclear pricing, optional controller confusion, and a couch experience that still needs a keyboard nearby, then Valve is leaving too many easy points on the table. What they need is simple to explain and probably hard to execute. One box, one controller, one button, your Steam library on the TV. That is the dream version. And that is also why I am watching the launch window so closely. Valve has reiterated 2026. Earlier messaging pointed to the first half of the year. If they are still trying to hit that, then we are running out of calendar. A June announcement or launch would pretty much make sense here. July starts to feel like they missed the first half window unless they clarify the timeline. So yes, I think we are close. The shipments suggest movement. SteamOS references suggest preparation. The controller launch suggests demand. And Valve's public comments suggest they do not want people thinking the plan has fallen apart. But close does not automatically mean ready. Ready means they have enough supply that the store does not melt instantly. Ready means they have a price that does not make people laugh and close the tab. That is the line for me. If Valve comes in at $650 or $699 with the controller included, I am probably there day one. That is the version where I can justify it as the living room Steam box that I have wanted for years. If it is $799 with a controller in the box, I have to think about it, but I am still listening. Now, if we get close to that $900 mark, and the controller is another $99 on top, that's where I take a pause, because at that point, I am not just buying convenience, I am pretty much buying an expensive second PC for one room of the house. And that is where a lot of people are going to draw the line. So let me know where yours is. What price makes a Steam Machine a day one buy for you? What price makes you walk away? Do you care if the controller is bundled, or are you fine buying it separately? And if Valve only has a small launch allocation, are you camping the Steam store again after what happened with the controller? I will be watching this closely because the second Valve gives us the real price, release date, and SKU breakdown, that is the video. This is Ed Saavedra. Hit subscribe if you want the update when it drops, and I will catch you all in the next one.